My name's Rahul Bissonauth. For anyone who doesn't know, I'll give you a kind of an overview of what Unus Sports Hub does, who we are, and why we're talking about social impact. I know the title on the agenda was Best Practice Social Impact. I won't comment on whether it's best practice, but it would tell you a little bit about the kind of things that we're doing around social impact, social business within particularly the Olympic movement. So I'm going to kind of focus in on Paris 2024 and the work that we're doing with the IOC. But I'll start with a bit of an overview of kind of who we are and what we do. Great. So, I mean, I don't know if many people will know who this guy is. He's not my dad, although he could be confused as such. So, Professor Muhammad Yunus, he is a Nobel Peace Prize winner from 2006. Been working in the world of kind of poverty for the last 40, 50 years. He's credited as kind of being the very first social entrepreneur, so kind of invented the concept of social entrepreneurship. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work in Bangladesh, creating a bank called the Grameen Bank. The Grameen Bank was effectively the world's first bank for the poor, where he made kind of micro investments into poor people in Bangladesh to help lift families out of poverty. No link to sport whatsoever, but that's kind of his background. And now today, I mean, there are lots of Unus organisations around the world. Microcredit is now a thing, and there are lots of replicas of these banks kind of all over the world. But that's kind of where we've come from. So kind of Professor Yunus is at the centre of, our ecosystem. What we do as an organisation is kind of take the kind of Unus teachings, the Unus ecosystem, and apply it to the sport industry. So we're trying to combine the concepts of social business and sport to end poverty, unemployment, and the climate crisis through all of the work that we do. And we do that through working with thousands of young people, organisations, athletes around the world to help them realise their social business potential. Before I do that, actually, first I'll give a bit of a definition of what do we mean by social business. So we're not necessarily talking about charity here, we're not talking about for-profit businesses, we're talking about organisations that exist to solve a particularly pressing human problem. That might be the environment, that might be unemployment, that might be, I'm not going to list social issues here, there are obviously lots. But these are organisations that are set up with that kind of solving that mission, or having kind of purpose at the very heart of their work. All of their profits and surpluses are reinvested in their mission. They don't tend to rely on grants or donations. They have kind of sustainable revenues. And they can take on investment. So lots of these organisations are quite large and multinational organisations. But it's all about putting purpose at the very heart of those organisations. There is a very kind of technical definition of there's like 7 rules of social business that Professor Yunus has developed over the last 40, 50 years as kind of a precursor to the B Corp movement. But I won't go through those 7, mainly because I can't remember all 7 of them. But just to give you an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about social business, it's the kind of concept of business for good. In general, but not necessarily charities, NGOs in that field. The work that we do kind of draws on the whole of the Unus ecosystem. So over the last 40, 50 years, they've built Unus organisations in over 150 countries around the world. There's over 5,000 kind of specialists, individuals, organisations as part of that network. We are the only one focused on sport. So why sport and why social business and the Olympics? So as you do, as a Nobel Prize winner, you meet lots of people, you build lots of relationships with individuals, and it just so happened that Professor Yunus built a really strong friendship with Thomas Bach at the IOC, as you do. And so for the last kind of, 2022, so the last 6 years or so, Professor Yunus and Thomas Bach have had lots of conversations about embedding social business and social purpose at the heart of the Olympic movement. What that led to was in 2018, the signing of an agreement between the Unus Sports Hub, which was kind of our kind of founding moment, and Thomas Bach at the IOC, with the initial focus to make the Paris 2024 Olympic Games the very first socially responsible and social inclusive Olympic Games, or the social business Olympics, effectively. I'll go into a bit more detail about what that means and kind of the work that's being done over the next few slides, but just to give you a bit of flavour, so since those conversations in 2018, our work's kind of varied into lots of different programs with the International Olympic Committee. A couple of examples that you might have come across or might come across in future. The first one is the Athlete 365 Business Accelerator. So this is a global program where the IOC funds an education program for athletes to help them set up businesses alongside their careers. So it's, we work with current and former Olympians to help them think about their futures, and also what are the kind of causes that they're interested in, how can they give back to society whilst generating an income alongside their careers. I guess primarily it's focused at those athletes who, haven't necessarily been the most commercially successful through their careers. I think roughly, for example, in France, 40% of athletes are actually living below the poverty line. So it's kind of actually, how do we equip these athletes who have, a certain set of skills and profile and reach to generate an income alongside their careers, but also give back to society. So we run a whole program all year round with Olympic athletes where we help them become social entrepreneurs. Another example is the International Olympic Committee's Young Leader Program, where the IOC selects 25 young people from around the world. They don't necessarily have to be athletes, to help them become future leaders within the sport industry. So they get lots of support from IOC sponsors, they get a training and education program, all about preparing them to be future leaders within the sport industry. It's a 4-year commitment from the IOC to these young people, and crucially, each of these young people gets a 10,000 Swiss franc kind of stipend to set up their own social projects, their own businesses. So just another kind of way in which we're working within the sporting ecosystem to embed social purpose at the heart of, in this instance, people who are going to build careers within the industry, but right within the centre of the Olympic movement. We do all sorts of other initiatives around Olympic Games legacy. So we're working in Sarajevo and Pyeongchang on how do they utilize those facilities and those Olympic venues to become social business hubs and become really kind of combining sport and social business for the prosperity of local people. We also, I'm focusing on the IOC. We do lots of work with other federations and associations around the world, but obviously the flagship one is the Olympics. So centering in on Paris 2024. So I mentioned that was kind of our founding purpose, really, was to help create the first sustainable, inclusive and social Olympic Games in history. I mean, obviously lots of previous games have included elements of this. And this is effectively a partnership between Professor Yunus and us as Yunus Sports Hub representing him. An organisation called Le Canot over in France, the Paris 2024 organising committee, and the Olympic delivery company Solideo. So they're responsible for all of the infrastructure for the games. I'm sure you might be aware of that. And effectively, our role was to try and design a program and procurement strategy that engages social enterprises, social businesses in the delivery of the games. So how do we educate, mobilise both social entrepreneurs, small businesses, social organisations, to prepare them to be part of the Olympic game movement and part of the actual delivery of the games in 2024. And on the flip side, how do we educate, the procurement teams, the host city, the key individuals and partners locally to make sure that they understand what social business is, they know how to engage with these types of organisations who might be smaller than the organisations they're used to working with. Ultimately, so that social enterprises, charities, NGOs, smaller organisations can benefit from the contract opportunities, the value of those, the economic opportunities linked to the Olympic Games. So what did we build? I don't speak French, so I'm not going to, don't test me on any of the language here, but we launched a platform called ESS 2024. ESS effectively is French for the social economy and the organisations linked to the social economy. And what we did is we built a platform that acts as a bridge between the Olympic Games and the social economy. So it has three main roles. The first one is around market intelligence. So firstly, understanding and mapping who are the kinds of social businesses, social organizations that can play a role within the Olympic Games delivery. So, what skills do they have? How many of those organizations are there? How ready are they to take on contracts of this kind of size? Second part of that is actually helping those organizations understand where are the opportunities. So how do we have in a single place all of the contract opportunities that might be available between now and 2024 for organizations to be part of. So a whole kind of piece of work around market intelligence. The second part is around promotion and brokering. So that's actually, building relationships between some of these smaller social enterprises and businesses with some of the major event suppliers. So, for example, looking at how do these organizations form joint ventures, how do they work together in order to secure contracts at the games, and also just raising general awareness of why social business, why the social economy, why is it important for organizations like this to be part of a supply chain of a major event. And the last area is around capacity building. So how do we actually educate, train, improve the skills and capacities of these organizations so that they are able to deliver really high quality services as part of a major event like the Olympic Games. I won't go into all of the detail, but just a couple of examples of the types of initiatives that have been running over the last couple of years. So lots of different education programs, for example, for helping social enterprises understand how to respond to public contract opportunities, helping them to understand the role of as a subcontractor within an agreement. Actually, on the procurement side, helping the procurement teams understand the importance of social clauses, and then lots of case studies and examples of where joint ventures like this have happened in the past, successful social businesses, how they can grow and make an impact on a major event like this. So ultimately, what's important from that is what kind of impact is it having. So we are still, we're just under 2 years out from the Games in Paris, and so the program will continue right up until the Games and beyond. So some of the key facts and figures to bear in mind that have happened as a result of this education program. Over 3,000 social businesses have been engaged in the education program so far. So that's been a process of whether that's from mapping them to understanding their needs, their skills, how can they play a role within a major event. 148 of these social businesses have gone on to win contracts as part of the Olympic Games, and that's either as a result of graduating from the program and forming a joint venture or a partnership with another supplier, or winning them outright themselves. Over 50 of the partnerships created there, so over 50 partnerships have been formed where they are actual joint ventures between a social enterprise or a social business and a major event supplier. There's been a whole host of guides, resources, events, newsletters, etc., that are going on a weekly basis to help prepare organizations to successfully win contracts. But I think the most kind of standout statistic is that an estimated 60% of the suppliers to the Paris 2024 Games will be either small and medium enterprises or from the social economy. So they're really trying to embed social business at the heart of Paris 2024. I think that's kind of all I had, because it was just to introduce you to some of the work that we're doing in regards to Paris. And then just a quote from Professor Yunus. So, like I said, so our role really is to try and embed social business, social purpose at the heart of the sport industry. We've obviously started with our work in the IOC over the past couple of years, building relationships with lots of organisations in other industries too. For example, within football, we're in talks with FIFPro and Women in Football about a kind of Football for the Goals accelerator. So trying to take these examples of work that are happening within the Olympic movement and replicating them in other sports as well. But yeah, that's me. So thank you for listening.
I'll give you my mic. Questions, comments from the floor? Don't be shy. We've got another microphone.
It's only that simple one for me. How'd you join? How do we sign up?
Great question. In terms of for Paris 2024, I think you can access via the platform. But more generally, our work as Unisports Hub, just drop me an email. We're a French-based company. I'm probably the only person in the team that doesn't speak French, and I'm the only UK employee. So in terms of how do you join, how do you get involved, then please reach out to me. Yeah.
So it is a sort of a build on your question, how do you get involved? So if you're a commercial company and are interested in this, because you mentioned that, was it 60% of the SME were getting the contract. So how do people in this room actually get involved, though? What do they do? If I was tendering for a company a contract in Paris, what do we do?
Yeah, that's good. Great question. Yeah. So, for specifically around Paris 2024, so the platform ESS 2024 is live. There are lots of, you will need to probably understand French in order to access it, but it's because it's tailored mainly to French-based organisations. But there is quite an easy way to go on the website and sign up, and you get instant access to kind of the contract opportunities that are coming up for Paris 2024. You get pointed in the right direction in terms of organisations you might be able to work with, and some of the kind of upcoming events.
Other questions? Because I've got another particular one if there isn't somebody else. Did you get a chance to see what was happening with Birmingham Games on their social impact type work?
So I actually only joined Unisports Hub the week after the games.
Right, okay.
I was in Birmingham for the games, and yeah, so we had no direct involvement with the Birmingham Games. We've been kind of all focused on Paris, but we're talking at the moment with Commonwealth Games England, the Commonwealth Sport Foundation, and the Birmingham Organising Committee about how do we take lessons from what they've been doing into Paris as well.
Yeah, because they did do some quite detailed work on social impact, and that did feed into procurement as well, which I was curious about it. But any other questions? Yes, another question.
So anything that's kind of a IOC property, so we often work with the IOC sponsors on a lot of our programs. So yeah, we wouldn't be able to kind of develop our own relationships on IOC related activities, but we have lots of kind of sponsors, partners, businesses on some of the other programs. So, when I mentioned the Athlete 365 Accelerator, we run our own versions of that of the non-IOC style initiatives. So, for example, in Paris, we are running an Athlete Accelerator for local athletes. In Dakar, in Senegal, we're developing a similar kind of concept for Senegalese athletes, which are not IOC driven or IOC funded, so we need sponsors, funders to fund those kind of interventions. And the same from an events point of view. We've kind of realised that we've been so aligned with the IOC in terms of the development of this initiative that actually it's quite prohibitive from future opportunities because people see us as being too IOC associated. So we were trying to position ourselves as more host city orientated going forward. So actually, how do you as a host city work with an organisation like Unisports Hub to embed social business and social procurement into your event strategy and your legacy plans, rather than via the IOC. So we're having lots of conversations with host cities around or potential host cities around the world around how do they, when they're planning for a major event, when they're hosting a major event, how do they make sure that social business is at the heart of their procurement strategy?
Oh, very sensible. Well, we've actually let it run over time, so I think we'll have to stop there. But it's created a lot of interest, so thank you very much indeed. It's a great initiative, so well done. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.